children ask the funniest things. Some pretty silly questions, really. Why does the snow melt? Or is God old? Will my dog go to heaven? Things like that. I'm an adult, and I got to say, those are silly questions. And as we get to be adults, we stop asking such silly questions. Don't we? In Mark 18, Jesus is in the midst of being asked some pretty silly theological questions, stupid theological questions, actually. They're meant to make the askers look brilliant and Jesus look silly. Some Sadducees came to Jesus asking him a question. You see, according to Mosaic law, if a man died and he didn't have any sons, his brother should marry the widow and bear a son, and the children would be the children of the dead son, the dead brother. And now that sounds pretty weird to us, but in a society where your pride was your sons, it made sense. And, it was also a good way to take care of the widow. Now the Sadducees wanted to know, if a man dies and he doesn't have any kids and his brother marries his widow and he dies, and his other brother marries the widow and he dies, and ultimately 7 different brothers. And then she finally dies. Almost sounds like a joke, doesn't it? 2 pastors walk into a bar. Or a pastor, a rabbi, and a priest all die and they stand before St. Peter and he says to them, well, whose wife is she? Now here's the rub. The Sadducees don't even believe in the resurrection. They don't believe that there's any life after this one. They believe that when you die, that's it, and you're done. So when they come to Jesus with this question, they think that the question they're asking him is absolutely absurd. They want Jesus to entertain them. They want to laugh a bit at him. And not just at Jesus, they want to laugh at all of the other fools who believe in the resurrection of the dead. They can kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Now, being an expert in theology makes us pretty smug. I mean, think about it. I'm an expert at God. Rocket science, no physics. Brain surgeons know brains, and I know God. I mean, I think I have this stuff pretty well figured out. Charismatic Christians believe that when the Holy Spirit indwells somebody, that he manifests himself by causing the person to speak in unknown languages. Sometimes God also provides an interpretation for those utterances. I remember one time painting a friend of mine into a theological corner one time regarding tongues, and I smugly asked him, so if you pray in an unknown language and you don't know what you're praying, what's the point? You think God even understands when you babble on like that? I was pretty proud of myself. I knew my theology. I knew they were on shaky ground, and I felt like it was my job to make them look silly. I wonder what Jesus would say if I brought that same question to him. If I approached him with the same smugness, the same chuckle in my voice as I asked him, should I ask you a question in English, or would you rather me babble to you in the Spirit? Theologians can be kind of smug. I was having a discussion with a Calvinistic friend of mine who was a fellow theologian. We often traded nerdy barbs. And Calvinists believe that if somebody genuinely gives their life to Jesus and they're saved, and from that moment on they can do nothing to lose or change their salvation. And that always just strikes me as funny. You mean if I don't want to follow Jesus anymore and I live like the devil himself, I still get to go to be with God when I die? I mean, what's the point? I don't even really want to go. Isn't that brilliant? I think it makes the whole theology look stupid. I wonder what Jesus would say. Whose wife is she? See, part of the things that make for stupid theological questions are the smug little ideas that we have, and we think that we have it all figured out. The Sadducees were sure that they had the whole God thing figured out and the resurrection thing figured out. And so they asked Jesus a question that's designed to make everyone know that they're smarter than all these other theologians out there. They're better than all of those simpletons who believe that there's a life after this one. Jesus didn't exactly answer like they thought he would. I mean, they thought if he were smart, he'd dismiss all of it as foolishness because there's not really any resurrection. And if he were a fool, he'd try to sort it out like the others did. Instead, Jesus said, "You have it right. This is a silly question, but not for the reason that you think. The resurrection is very real. And if you're going to serve this God you say you serve, then you'd better realize that he's the God of the living and not the dead. You think you're so smart. Yeah, your silly construct is indeed silly. But the idea you're mocking, not so much." Now, I don't know how long it was after I made fun of my charismatic buddy that God said to me through the voice of a godly man I know. He said, "You know, these guys may not have it all together, right? But the Spirit is very real, and you might be missing something really important." That silly once saved, always saved jab I took at my Calvinistic brother. I wonder what Jesus might say to me. Of course, God's not going to force you into an eternal relationship with him. But you need to know that no one will ever pry you out of my hand. You mock with your question, but you're missing out on something very real by your smug know-it-all questions. Those are stupid theological questions. So what's the answer? Can we not ask questions? Does the truth not matter? Of course you can ask questions, and of course the truth matters. But how about this? How about we start asking questions like children do? That we ask the questions that we really care about. That we ask the questions that we really want to know the answer to. Jesus, in the resurrection, will I still know Wendy? Jesus, when the Holy Spirit indwells me, how will I know? Jesus, you know this tendency I have to wander. Will you not let me go? God, are there playgrounds in heaven